There is a mathematical answer to whether or not you should buy or if you should just continue to rent. There is a mathematical answer, but this is not totally a mathematical decision, okay? Sometimes you just kind of have to go with your gut on this. We're going to lay out all the facts, and at the end, I think you will be able to determine some people need to rent, some people need to buy. Okay, so while I'm pretty sharp with this type of stuff and the numbers in our business, I don't make these decisions completely on my own. So my accountant, we actually went to school together. And while I was pretty sharp in school, she was like really sharp. Like she's really, really good with numbers and stuff. And she's really just been a blessing for me in my business. And we had this conversation, in the beginning whenever we were looking at renting equipment versus buying it. And I'll tell you what she told me. She said, John, rent. Right now, rent makes sense for us. And we're going to talk about why she suggested that. I totally understood it. And as we've rented for a couple years now, I really understand it now. And where that tipping point is, where okay, it no longer makes sense to rent. It is time for us to buy equipment, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the pros and cons of renting and the pros and cons of buying. I'm going to give you my final thoughts on when it may make sense for you to rent and when it may make sense for you to buy, okay? Let's go ahead and jump into a spreadsheet here that I created. I'm like that. We'll just kind of lay it all out, and you can make your own decision at the end of this video. All right, guys, renting versus buying equipment. We're going to start with renting equipment. Let's go over here and look at the pros, okay? So the first and most notable, I feel like, is you pay only when you need the equipment, okay? So if you're slow at any point in the season, like during the winter, or maybe work is slowed down or whatever, you're not having to make a payment on this machine, okay? And furthermore, you're able to hold on to your cash reserves, okay? So whether or not you decide to use financing on this machine, or if you decide to just pay for it in cash, either way you're going to drain cash reserves, or you're going to finance, or you're going to end up doing both, if you put down a big down payment on it. So that's something to consider, that with renting, you're holding on to all your cash, and you do not have any payments during the winter whenever you're slow, okay? Only pay as you need the machine, and that has been a huge pro for us. Secondly, you still get to deduct your rental fees, all right? That is something that folks say, oh, you need to get the equipment bought, so you can have tax deductions. Well, you still get some pretty good tax deductions for every time you rent that machine, and then all the attachments that you need for the machine, okay? Okay, next, you have access to every type of machine whenever you rent, okay? For example, there are sometimes whenever we need a wide track machine for extra stability. Sometimes we need the narrow track to get into a really, really tight area. And then other times we need full-on skid that we can pick up an entire pallet of sod and move across a lawn. Or maybe we're bringing in some dirt and need a bigger piece of equipment. And the point is whenever you're renting, you rent exactly the machine that you need for the job. So you're putting the best machine on each job instead of having to use what you have, all right? And that's another huge pro of renting. Next, there's no insurance that you're having to keep on the machine. And then there's no maintenance. And we all know how expensive, maintenance and repairs are. There's just something to be said for whenever you're done with the machine for the day, or if you rent it for the week or whatever, you drop that machine off at your local rental yard, and they handle every bit of the maintenance on that machine, all right? There's really, really something to be said for that, all right? So there really are some great pros to renting, okay? And these pros have served us very well so far. All right, let's talk about the cons, all right? Let's keep this as objective as possible. So first, it's inconvenient to return these machines on the deadline. It really is. Like sometimes, you're just like, golly, I got to break away from the job now, or maybe you're not quite done with it, but you need to have the machine back so you don't incur late fees. And then there's just a time waste of running back and forth to the rental yard. There's no denying that it is inconvenient. If you're using these machines a lot, it is inconvenient to break away from what you're doing and have to pick up and return. I mean, it's not just pick up and return. It's pick up, return, but you need to gas it up and have it back in good condition. So you're making sure you're cleaning the machine, and you're doing this every single time. There's really just a lot of time associated with that, you know. The next is, and this is a big con. If you have ran into this, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You're at the mercy of the other renter, you know, who had the machine before you, getting that thing back on time and in good condition. Man, there's been some times, I made a little side note over here, when I have showed up, mind you, we've ordered, you know, 10 or 15 pallets of sod. It's already been cut, you know. I'm trying to prep the day before, and I get there to the rental yard, and, you know, some schmuck hasn't returned the machine, or he broke it, or he's just laid up, you know, drunk or whatever, you know, just who knows what he's doing. And I got sod that's about to be burning up if I can't get this yard prepped out and the sod down, you know. So that is a huge con. You really are at the mercy of the other people before you, having that machine there on time, you know, if that rental yard is super busy. So the side note here is, I have actually driven 3 hours before, when I had a big job, and I had sod that was on the way, and the 2 or 3 rental yards that I use in our area, they didn't have equipment, or the equipment that I'd already scheduled for, the dude had messed it up. Somebody else didn't return equipment on time. So sometimes you just have to do what you got to do, and that is a huge inconvenience there. Next is, you don't have access to a machine for smaller jobs that are not really worth renting. Meaning that if you had a machine that was always yours, meaning that you've bought it, well, all those little jobs that you're like, well, it's not really worth renting this machine, you know, having to take the time to go pick it up and everything. Well, you already have the machine, so you're going to have it, and you're going to increase the productivity of all those other little jobs, and it's just going to make you that much more money, okay? So it is a con by not having access to a machine for all the little smaller jobs, all right? So, and guys, if there are any other pros and cons to renting, make sure you put them down in the comment section. Let's just all learn from each other. But these are the things in the 3 years that I have, you know, been renting equipment. These are the biggest pros and cons that I've seen so far. But let me know your thoughts down there, and let's jump into buying and owning the equipment instead. Okay, so buying, owning, pros and cons, okay? The first, and that piggybacks off the last section that we were talking about, you have access to the machine for every single job you do. So even on those little tiny jobs where you're just moving a little bit of material, you know, something that you would typically be wheelbarrowing into the backyard, well now you have a machine to just speed you up, save your back, and that really is a pro, because you're just increasing efficiencies when you typically wouldn't if you had to go take the time to go rent equipment, right? The next is accelerated tax deductions, all right? You can use double declining, or, you know, you can just use a Section 179, or you can do accelerated depreciation, you know. But my point being is that while you get tax deductions with renting the equipment, you're not getting as much as if you buy the equipment. You have more options, okay? And you can accelerate those tax deductions and get yourself in a better position. So the time that you would really want to look in on this is whenever you have, you know, maybe some depreciation is about to finally be used up on some other equipment, and it's time, like you're running out of depreciation for your other equipment, and next year, you know, you don't have anything left to depreciate. Well, now it's time to look at buying a piece of equipment, okay? Because there really is more options whenever you buy versus rent for tax savings. And basically what I was saying over here on a side note is you can reap more tax savings through faster depreciation. I just wanted to make that little note over here so you guys understood that, all right? And I kind of like, you know, thinking about having the machine. This is another pro. It's like having a super employee on a low wage. You can sit there and run the numbers like, okay, you know, if my payment on this, let's say $500 a month, or if it was, I don't know, $1,000 a month, or whatever your payment would be for this machine. Well, if you see what an employee costs you over the course of a month, well, this is like a minimum wage, like cut in half 3 times employees. So if you view it like that, you could really justify buying this machine. You got an employee that's can lift like 10 times what a normal human being can be, never reports for work late, super strong. You just got to feed it gas, and diesel, it's ready to go. So I kind of think about it like that. It really is. There's something to be said for just having a machine on hand to just save your back. All right, cons, and these are some really big cons. Again, we got to keep it objective. All right. Number one, you're either going to drain your cash reserves or you're going to use debt. All right. I don't know anybody who's given anybody a skid steer or an excavator and said, "Here, I just want to bless you with this. You can have it for free." You either got to use your hard-earned cash or you're going to have to go into debt. Okay. And both of those things, oh man, I don't like using up cash, and I certainly don't like going in debt. Okay. The next thing is you have payments on this machine even during slow times. All right. That's a problem. We all know what happened with COVID. We all know what happened whenever government shut down everything. And the economy, honestly, has been real sketchy. People are very price sensitive right now, and when times get slow, man, if you got payments on this machine, that would just cause me a lot of stress and anxiety and stuff. So if you have payments during slow times, that is definitely a con. All right, look. These attachments are also expensive. If you got to get a Harley rake or soil cultivator or any type of hydraulic attachment, man, you're looking at 8 to 12 grand for these things. Like I didn't know, guys, in the beginning. I assumed an attachment was maybe $2,000, $3,000. I didn't know. No, absolutely not. These attachments are super expensive, man. So it's not just the machine that you're buying that is super high right now. Like those attachments are really high too. So you're not just coming out of pocket 40 grand for the machine. You're coming out another 20 to get the attachments you need. It's an expensive proposition to buy this thing. It really is. If you're financing it, you got to insure the thing. So that's even more money. All right. There's finance companies that are going to require you to insure the machine. And then if you bought it with cash, well, it would be silly not to insure it. You have a $40,000 asset sitting there that you're not insuring. That doesn't make any sense. So you're going to have to put insurance on it. So that's going to cost more money. All right, and this is a big one. Maintenance and repair services are expensive. All right, well, John, I got a warranty. Dude, I'm sorry, but warranties are as good as the paper they're printed on most of the time. Those dudes, they always find a way to wiggle out of the warranty. And, maybe you got, some stuff that can be repaired under warranty. But look, if we're just being honest, most of the times, the majority of the maintenance and repairs are not covered under warranty unless it's just something absolutely catastrophic. And those maintenance and those simple repairs, they are expensive, okay? And that is a con of owning the equipment yourself. You're responsible for all that stuff. All right, final thoughts down here. I've made some notes, and I'm going to tell you finally whether I think you should rent or if you should buy, depending on what situation you're in. Okay, my thoughts for buying the equipment. All right, here we go. There is a machine that will do 80 to 90% of what you need, okay? That is the machine that you need to buy. If you are needing to buy, that is the machine. So again, we talked about whenever you rent, you can get whatever you need and get the perfect machine, but there is a machine for you and your business that will do 80 to 90% of what you need, okay? The next is you need to be renting the equipment as much as possible until you really understand what you need, okay? If you have not rented the equipment at least a year, probably 2 years, you do not need to buy anything. You don't know what you need yet. Like you haven't earned it yet, man. Like you just don't know. You're just going out there throwing money at something and you don't really understand what you need. So you really, really need to rent a lot of different types of equipment before you pull the trigger on something. I said this earlier, there is a mathematical answer, but it's not a mathematical decision. All right, look at this. I have never met anyone who bought a good machine for cash and said, I wish I never had this thing. That should give you some insight, guys, right there. All right, and to my final thought on when you should buy. Here it is. If you can check these boxes, if you've rented the equipment for a long time, and you're all in on your business, you got a steady stream of work coming, and you can put down at least half on the machine. If you have the ability to put down half on the machine, buy the machine. All right. But you've got to make sure you've rented the equipment for long enough that you really know what you need, that you have a steady stream of work coming in, and you're not leveraging, you're not financing the entire thing, okay? You need to put down at least 50%. If you can pay for it in cash without completely, depleting your operating capital, and have enough, capital to just to manage your business still, but by all means, just pay for it in cash and be done with it. Most of us don't want to do that, though, so a good rule of thumb is to put down at least half so you have equity in that machine, okay? So you can get out from under it if you need to. All right, when should you rent? My thoughts against buying, I guess this would be whenever you should rent. All right, if you cannot put down at least half on the equipment, you should not buy anything. All right, I'm sorry, I said what I said. If you have not rented equipment for at least a year, possibly two, you should not be buying anything. Again, you don't know what you need, and you just haven't put in your dues yet to really know if this is something that's going to work out. If you're not renting that equipment a lot, you're not busy enough. That's just the fact of it. You're not busy enough if you're not having to rent it enough. If you do not have a steady stream of landscaping jobs, you should not buy anything. Period. You cannot buy equipment without having work pouring in. This is a big deal right here. Look here. I've met a lot of folks who financed a machine and regretted having it. I haven't met anybody who bought it for cash and regretted it. Okay? What does that tell you? That tells you if you can pay for it in cash or at least put down 50%, move forward with it. Finally, if you're not completely slammed with work and will need to finance most of the machine, you should be renting it, okay? If you cannot put down at least half and you're not slammed with work, you should be renting. All right, guys, so everything in my business it's paid for with the exception of my truck, and that's just because I didn't want to come off that much cash, okay? But literally everything, all the mowers that we have, all my utility trailers, the dump trailer, the trucks, they're all paid for, okay? And that's because I put down a lot of money up front on them, and I worked very, very diligently to get those things paid off, all right? And my point being is that whenever we go to buy this machine, and we are going to get a machine, I'm either going to pay for this thing outright with cash or I'm going to put down a ton of cash on it, all right? So my final piece of advice to you, whether you're considering renting or buying, would be this. If you can put down a large sum of money and you have steady work coming in, buy the thing, all right? It makes sense to buy it. You'll get a lot of efficiencies out of that, all right? If you are still figuring it out, okay, and you don't have a steady stream of work and you're gonna have to finance the majority of the machine, all right? You do not need to be buying that thing, all right? There's too many benefits to renting. I have rented for 3 years successfully with tax deductions and getting the perfect machine for every job and just kind of navigating through some of those little headaches, of having to return the machine on somebody else's schedule, all right? Those trade-offs, those cons have been worth it for me to continue to rent, all right? But we're right at that tipping point where it's starting to make sense for us to look at buying a machine. And since I was, kind of going through that debate right now with me and my accountant, I just wanted to share some of that with you guys who may find yourself in a similar situation, all right? Y'all take care. I wish you nothing but prosperity and blessings for your lawn care landscaping business.